Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Bells Must Ring podcast. I am your host, Andrew Rice, here with my usual co-host, Arnav Sarkar. Breaking with us to break down the upcoming Rutgers Ohio State game is Justin Golba from Land Grant Holy Land. How you doing today, Justin?
I'm good, man. How are you guys?
Really excited. Another week of Big Ten football. No better conference in the world, right?
It's my favorite conference to watch. Especially this year, but
Yeah.
in general.
I don't think the SEC heads would necessarily agree with that, but they don't. They don't. Their opinion does not count in my mind.
No,
So,
not here. Not here. Not here.
absolutely. Um, so just gonna roll into a little bit of kind of giving us some background information on the Buckeyes for the Scarlet Knight fans that haven't necessarily been following all the Big Ten this year. Um, just kind of wanted to start by looking at the different position groups on Ohio State. If you were to take your offense and kind of divide them into like what is your best position group on offense, what is your worst, why do you think that way?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious one for the best is the receivers. There's five guys that I think people think will probably play in the NFL one day in the receiver room. Obviously, the two that stand out with Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith, both of which might not play in this game. So there's that added layer to it. Carnell Tate hasn't played in two games. Smith played against UCLA, but he was on a pitch count and did not play in the second half and was seen limping off the field, pretty much putting a pause in Columbus, I would say, with people trying to figure out what was going on with him. And there's a little bit of PTSD, I think, with Ohio State fans and like receiver injuries going back to, I guess, 2 years ago now, maybe three. I don't know, with Jackson Smith and Jigba when he got hurt early in the season. And then they were like, yeah, he'll be fine. He'll be back. And he just never came back. So I think Ohio State fans kind of jumped to that with Tate and Smith. So hopefully they're healthy. It's Ryan Day is notoriously very quiet about injuries. I think he's kind of taken the different step than Urban Meyer was very open about them, but Ryan Day has kind of gone the other way. He's pretty quiet about them. So we probably won't know until 11:59 when they're warming up on the field if they're playing or not. But I would expect maybe to play, but be on a pitch count if I had to guess, just from what I've heard and what I've seen people say. But we'll see. Again, we have Michigan on the horizon. Obviously, a game that is a little. I don't know what the word is. Important, I guess you'd say, for Ohio State fans. So and players. So if they might not play in this game, then you'd see guys like Bryson Rogers, who was a 5-star. Somebody that has kind of stepped into the role when they don't play. Importantly, Brandon Innes has been the wide receiver 3 all year, but he had 6 catches against UCLA. It was kind of Julian Sayans' safety net, I guess you'd say, in that game. And then Max Clare has been our tight end all year. He had 5 catches against UCLA when it was Innes and Clare that kind of stepped up when Tate and Smith are out. In terms of negatives, if there's something Ohio State doesn't do elite this year, it's not poor. I think they're 67th in the country in rushing, but it's not their strong suit. And actually coming into this game where Rutgers is, Antoine Raymond has been on fire. I'd say something Rutgers probably does a little bit better coming into this game. So, it's the offensive line's a little shaky, especially the right side. And we've had an injury to a couple of those guys. So we'll see kind of how that goes. But if there's something Ohio State does struggle with is the rushing defense. I know that's not something Rutgers has done particularly well stopping this year. So it'll be interesting to see kind of the push and pull of that. But this year, and especially, our 2 best running backs this year are 2 true freshmen. So they're just kind of also getting into the flow of the things and whatnot. So it's been interesting to watch.
I was going to say, because to my knowledge, really, the Buckeyes have had 3 rushers that, I believe, over 300, at least 3 rushers with over 300 yards on the season. They've been rotating. Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was Peoples that had like 9 touchdowns, but somebody, one of the other ones, had like
CJ
900 yards.
Yeah, CJ Donaldson's kind of been there. He was a West Virginia transfer. He actually has the most. I don't know if I saw the stat wrong, like the second most touchdowns in FBS of running backs or something, very quietly, just because he's been around for a while. But he's been there like kind of red zone, you need 2 yards kind of back. But then coming into the year, Peoples was supposed to be kind of the Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins replacement. He hasn't been as, I think, good as they wanted him to be, just straight up. So Bo Jackson and Isaiah West are two true freshmen that come in. The funny part about Bo Jackson is that's actually his nickname. His real name is Lamar Jackson. So he's just named after a ton of athletes apparently. But
Okay.
yeah, he don't go by Lamar, so he goes by Bo. So obviously a little less recognizable there. But he's been phenomenal. He's from Cleveland. So he's kind of stepped up. He was RB3 coming into the year. Now he's RB1. And then I would say Isaiah West has even been good enough that he's probably their RB2. But you'll see all four running backs in this game. Well, CJ Donaldson didn't play against UCLA. He was hurt. So as long as he's healthy, you'll see him. But you'll see 3 or 4 running backs for Ohio State for sure.
Well, being honest with you, it's that rotation that kind of scares the living daylights out of me, considering how every team seems to have their best rushing game against us. So that 3-man rotation kind of worries me, I won't lie.
They are coming off their best game, too. Against UCLA, they had, as a group, 222 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, especially with Tate and Smith kind of hobbled, they kind of leaned on that. So, we'll see if they might do that again.
Right. Not exactly looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's not the greatest look against a Rutgers rush defense that, I mean, Malik Washington from Maryland was, very not, known as not really being mobile, and he, took off for multiple big runs. So that was just, even the Maryland run game that struggled most of the year, they did pretty good. So Rutgers has struggled with mobile quarterbacks, just the run games in general. But, I mean, in terms of Ohio State, those 2 freshmen that you're talking about, and Bo Jackson and Isaiah West, I mean, I've been noticing they've been really stepping up over the weeks. I mean, Bo Jackson's had multiple 100-yard rush games the last few weeks. Isaiah West has also been pretty productive. I mean, I guess what can you say about the 2 freshmen that have kind of really almost in a way become the 2 lead backs for the Buckeyes, especially with some of the transfers being injured and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's thankful because most people thought they wouldn't have much of a role till next year because Peoples and Donaldson are both veterans and experienced. I think Donaldson's definitely gone next year. Peoples, he might be gone. So I think a lot of people expected them to, contribute next year more than this year. But again, Peoples just hasn't quite been what I think people thought he was going to be. I thought he would be 1,000-yard back preseason, just hasn't really been that. And Donaldson he's just more of a short down. He's not an every down back. So them stepping up and being able to contribute immediately has been huge because if not for them, Ohio State would be a very one-dimensional team, and it'd be a very good dimension. Julian Sayin is unbelievable, and the receivers are all NFL receivers. But anytime you want to, do what Ohio State wants to do, which is obviously win the Big Ten and win the championship, you need to have you need to be a multi-dimensional offense, and they've helped Ohio State at least become somewhat of that.
Even though they haven't been the most flashy team out there, they're not. They haven't other than Grambling State, they haven't dropped 60 on some poor bottom tier Big Ten team. The consistency of Ohio State is really I can't even describe it because it's almost like a machine methodically marching down the field, especially on offense.
Yeah.
But taking a quick pivot over to the defensive side of things, I'm going to ask you kind of the same question. What is your strong position group, and what is, I guess, your weak point if there is one?
Yeah, this isn't like a bragging thing on the defense. I really don't know what the bad position group is. I guess probably just they don't get to the quarterback as much as some teams do, but I wouldn't say they do it poorly. The strong position group is the linebackers. I mean, Arvo Reese and Sonny Styles are 2 of the best linebackers in the country. Reese has stepped up. It's funny. My day job, I'm a high school sports reporter in the Cleveland area, and Arvo Reese is from Cleveland. So I covered him a couple of times in high school, and I was like, this dude is different. I mean, the way he was moving in high school and stuff, it was very evident. When you watch high school games and you see D1 athletes and guys that might go pro, it's obvious. It's very obvious because they're that much better than everybody. And Reese was that way. So seeing him step up and just be the linebacker, I think he's one of the best 2 to 3 linebackers in the country, with Jacob Rodriguez, probably with Texas Tech. And he's been phenomenal. He's especially been good with, kind of mobile quarterbacks. They really limited DeMond Williams against Washington. He couldn't really do anything against them. They really limited even Arch Manning, his first game of the season, but we know Arch can run a little bit. So that's what they do best. And obviously Caleb Downs. as your third unit isn't a bad thing to have. Maybe I would say if anything, the corners can be a little, I don't want to say suspect at times, but Jermaine Matthews is still kind of working into his own as a corner, and Davison Igbinosun is very handsy. So you might get one or two pass interferences on him, but he's very, very confident, I think is the way to word it. He's kind of the cornerback that people joke about where like the ball will be aired 20 yards past the receiver and he does like the celebration,
Yeah.
Didn't exactly do anything there, but but so if there's anything, maybe those two guys, if you're facing a quarterback, how do you say it? Is it Calico-Mananas?
It's Calic Manis.
Okay, I was really struggling with that this week on our pod, but I just go. Is the Greek rifle still a thing? I remember that from like Minnesota, but they don't do that anymore.
Not really. I mean,
I've heard it like once or twice, but yeah, it's not like the most common, but it is still kind of like his nickname that I guess.
I remember hearing it like 3 years ago, but then I was looking up this week and I was like, I don't think people
really say that around here. Like that's, I think once in a while
they should.
We should. Yeah. It's a good name. It definitely.
It didn't transfer with him to Rutgers from Minnesota.
Maybe not. I don't know.
So he's obviously a good quarterback. KJ Duff is one of the better receivers in the conference. Mm-hmm. So I think they'll be able to throw the ball a little bit on us. But other than that, I do think it's a defense that's given up 7 points a game. So
I know I do like the series for our site, like where I look at kind of highlights from the previous week. I like to call it opponent film room. It's just nothing more than Twitter highlights and some statistical analysis. But for the defense, it's just like, 7.5 points per game they're allowing. I mean, that's not much more than a touchdown against some of the better offenses. Like, Illinois scored, I think, the season high of 16. Washington scored 6. I mean, that's a team that, has a very, good offense against most teams. I mean, they, especially with Damon Williams. But yeah, this Ohio State defense is different. Like even against Texas, they held them to 7. But even the D line, like with all the guys going to the NFL, I mean, the defensive line too looks like just about as good as last year. I mean, they're still making the same kinds of stops. They're very hard to run on. They're very big guys. Like, I mean, I guess, what can you say about, how good the defensive line has been? Because I guess that part, maybe I was a little bit, the rest of the defense, I was like, yeah, it's going to be great. D-line, I still thought was going to be pretty good, but they are just like an absolute brick wall up there as well.
Yeah, I think with them, the benefit is it's somebody else every week. 1 week it's Kenyatta Jackson, who's playing great. He had a great game last week. 1 week it's Caden Purry. He had 5 sacks against somebody. I forget, but he had 5 sacks this year in a game. And then, some weeks it's even like a Bo Atkinson from North Carolina. He was a transfer. He hasn't been as good as I think people expect him to be, but he's been, at least impactful. And then some weeks it's Caden McDonald, who's he just swallows, guys in the middle there. So it's very deep. It's very, it's not flashy, like you kind of said with names or anything. It's not the Cassius Howells of the world, but again, Caden Curry had 5 sacks in one game, so they can get to the quarterback. They can make life tricky. And then again, if they don't, then you just have the linebackers and the secondary to deal with, which is also really good. So
it's a machine on defense, but
I think it's suffocating. It's like when they don't allow big plays when they're the best red zone defense 2 years in a row in the country. Last year that was the big thing, even in the semifinal against Texas. They got down to the red zone, but they just couldn't do anything when they got there. Yeah. Penn State was the same way, and they're just as good in the red zone this year. So I don't know if that's a Ryan Day credit, because obviously we've switched over defensive coordinators, we switched over players, but it's the same kind of strength. So that's just, I guess, credit to what Ryan Day has built.
Not to keep tooting your horn there, but
we can do it. I like this.
Throughout the season, I've always kind of I've compared Ohio State to like a steamroller. They're not a race car where they'll blow right past you. Either way, you're still going to end up crushed.
Yeah. I think that's Joel Klatt in, I think it was the Washington game, maybe. No, that was a CBS game. I don't know, one of the big noon games. He compared it to he said the 2023 Michigan defense was like a boa constrictor. They just kind of constrict and constrict. Yeah. He was like, the Ohio State this year defense is like a pack of lions. Like Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, Caleb, they're always coming downhill.
Yeah,
they always know where to be. They always know they're never out of position. So it's kind of like a pack of lions hunting. It's like you can't really get away from them because they don't really make too many mistakes when it comes to positioning and those things, which is always important. There's always somebody standing somewhere.
Right. Just gonna kind of keep things moving along a little bit. You kind of alluded to this earlier, but are there any like real injury updates on Tate? And I know you said that Day keeps things close to the chest. So does Shiano. So we know how that is. He doesn't play his hand until the injury report comes out. But is there any like vibes or just anything on Tate and Smith for this Saturday?
Yeah, it's funny because it really makes fans angry. They hate how quiet they are about it, but I don't blame them. I mean, I think it's all game planning and stuff like that. Obviously, Ryan Day in the building knows more than we do, so he's game planning more than we think than we can in our heads. But also, Ohio State fans are lunatics, so there's also that. But I would say if I had to guess, I'd probably say they play a little bit, but I honestly don't know. It's tough because the Tate thing came out of nowhere against Purdue. I don't know if you guys saw. He was like dressed and went through warmups, and he felt tightness, and he was just standing on the sideline, and we were like, "What is going on?" Like he had his helmet in his hand. We thought he was like. Some people were like, "Is this disciplinary? Why is he not playing?" And then the broadcast didn't pick it up until about midway through the second quarter that he wasn't playing. Which was interesting. They were like, I don't think Garno Tate's been out there. And we were like, yeah, there you go. That's there it is. You finally noticed. So we don't really know. So that came out of nowhere. And then he just didn't play against UCLA either because of the same. They haven't even really said what the tightness is or where it is. They just keep saying tightness. I would assume hamstring or something like that, but they haven't actually said. And then Smith, his injury, he was just limp. I didn't really even know he was hurt. He popped up on the questionable. He popped up as questionable for the UCLA game again, like an hour before the game, which sent fans into an absolute frenzy. And he played in the first half. Played fairly well. I think he had like 4 catches for 40 yards. Had a one-handed catch, and then he just limped off the field after halftime. And he kind of limped off the field after he didn't play in the second half, and then limped off the field after the game, but limped off less. So. And that's kind of the last we've heard from him. I'm assuming they haven't practiced this week or anything, just to be safe. But it would make sense if they sat them out. Obviously, with Michigan coming up, and again, it's not when they turn to other receivers, they just turn to younger 5-stars. So it does help that. And again, Mylan Graham was a 5-star. Bryson Rogers, Brandon Inniss was in the same recruiting class as Garno Tate and was higher ranked. So there are other guys that they can turn to. And against UCLA, like I said, they just ran the ball a lot. So that might be what they do again. So we'll see. I truly, it's hard to make a prediction. I would lean towards they play a little bit just because if they don't, then that means Tate hasn't played for pretty much the entire month of November going into Michigan, which you don't love. And also if they don't, the more they don't play, the more injured you think they are. I would say Ryan Day had some not great comments this week about it. More of like, we're hoping they're better, not like they're getting better. So it's really hard to tell. He's really good at kind of keeping – he's got to be good at poker because he's really good at keeping his cards close to his vest. So we'll see. But if I had to lean one way or the other, I'd say Smith probably has a better chance to play than Tate just because I think he was less injured. He's missed less time, but I'm truly not positive. It's hard to guess.
Yeah, as much as it pains me to say, it sounds like we're a little bit of It sounds like we are a little bit of a rest up game. Maybe a mini bye week before Michigan. But as much as it pains me in the heart to say,
I will say this, not just because I'm on this, but that does scare me a little bit because I do think Ohio State's had a lot of games, especially in a row here, where like Purdue, UCLA, where. You can kind of do that. I do think Rutgers is a lot better than those teams. I don't know if you played them this year or what the scores were, but I do think you're better.
We played Purdue. We beat them by 3.
Yeah, so I got out with the win
better.
Yeah.
So I do think you guys are better. So it does scare me a little bit to do things like that. But yeah, again, it is a very next man up type mentality. So guys like I said, Bryson Rogers, Mylan Graham, you might hear those names a lot.
Yeah, last week, those names popped up on the stat sheet. Against UCLA, obviously they were throwing to them. I think both of them had catches, and obviously the run game as well with the freshman the running back. So yeah, a lot of kind of reserves in that stat sheet. Definitely something to pay attention to. But I mean, in terms of like the quarterback, like Julian Sayin, I feel like he's been like incredible this year. I mean, he hasn't maybe been the most explosive, but he's been incredibly accurate. He hasn't thrown a lot of interceptions. He's had a really good completion percentages all year. I mean, I guess what can you say about like the way Julian Sayin, has really taken command of this offense?
Yeah, I used to say the most accurate quarterback I've ever watched in college football was C.J. Stroud. Just his placement of the ball, the way he threw guys
Yeah,
open,
that
he
makes
was
sense.
just unbelievable at it. I think Sayin has passed him for that. Just in pure accuracy, he just doesn't. I mean, I think he's completing 81% of his passes, and
It's
it's
insane.
November
Yeah.
21st, so he just doesn't miss. He doesn't make a ton of mistakes either, which is very,
Yeah.
very interesting for a freshman. I mean, he's a freshman. He's a redshirt freshman.
Right.
Although he's
Right.
listed as a true sophomore some places. So I don't really know, but it's the same thing. But a first-year starter is kind of what I go with. So he doesn't really he's made 2 mistakes off the top of my head of like, shouldn't have thrown that ball. But I mean, I would take that 10 times out of 10 throughout the season. It's funny because, last year you have a guy like Will Howard who was good, but he wasn't, he was good, but he wasn't like an elite thrower of the football or anything like that. Julian, Will Howard is more like a, I don't really know how to explain Will Howard, honestly, but he was fine. But then Julian Sayin was like, and I love Will Howard, but
Yeah.
he made some mistakes. He
Yeah.
threw picks. He had a great bounce back mentality of like, all right, that play's over. Let's move forward. Kind of like the Penn State game last year was a good example. He threw a pick six. He
Oh
fumbled
yeah.
the ball in the end zone, so
Yeah.
he pretty much handed them 14 points.
Yeah.
But he still made a huge play down the stretch to win the game. Julian Sayin just doesn't make those mistakes. He doesn't do those things. So he threw
Yeah.
2 picks against Ohio, which is kind of a funny. Of his 4 picks of the year, 2 came against Ohio, and then 1 came in the end zone. I think against Purdue, he just tried to force it. But other than
Yeah.
that, he has 25 touchdowns and 4 picks, completing 81% of his passes. It's funny because it's like, as much as I enjoy, watching this year and getting excited for this team, obviously because they're undefeated, number 1 team in the country. Next year, Julian Sayin, Bo Jackson, and Jeremiah Smith
Oh
have
my
to come.
God.
So
That's
it's like,
true. Yeah.
it is even exciting to kind of think about the future because Julian's saying so young. So getting 2 years of him is going to be pretty fun.
Yeah, that's just wild to think about that you have all those playmakers coming back for next year. But with kind of getting through both the offense and the defense, what are the vibes around Columbus, as you're heading into the Michigan game, the Big Ten championship game most likely, and even the college football playoff? What is the mentality around the horseshoe?
Yeah, that's kind of the problem with Ohio State fans is it's never good until they just win a championship, and then it's good for like a week, and then it's bad again
Yeah.
because like you miss on a recruit or something. Ohio State fans are notoriously pretty negative in general, at least in my
Man, that's
experience.
hard to imagine. I mean, like I know, like we kind of some Rutgers fans, like there's a pretty good split, but yeah, I mean, but I feel like there's reasons to be. But for Ohio State, like expectations are just so high. It's like, well, even if we win, like have we been Michigan, which I guess that's a big deal now. But
That's the big thing.
yeah, I mean, I guess everybody's mindset's on beating Michigan because I mean that's the last thing they have to prove. They they won a national championship. They haven't beaten them in 5 years or. Well, it's gonna, 4th season. So hopefully this year, I mean, I guess for your sake, you guys get that one done. But yeah, I mean, I feel like, I guess,
Correct,
yeah,
yeah.
that's probably where the vibes are, right? They're probably focused on Michigan in the Big Ten championship, the playoff, like all those things on the road.
Yeah, it's funny because, Ohio State, Ryan Day says it publicly every year, so it's very known that their goals they have 3 goals: beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, win a national championship. Like that's their 3 goals. And technically, of the last 4 years, they've accomplished one of those.
Right. Yeah.
They've won 1 championship. They haven't won the Big Ten since 2020, and which is kind of hard to believe. And they haven't beat Michigan since COVID. So it's funny too. I'm 28 years old. So I only knew a world where we beat Michigan. Like it wasn't even they beat them. I think in the first 23 years of my life, we lost them twice. So it wasn't even like a blip on my radar that we could lose to them. The last 4 years have been rough. I don't like losing to Michigan. It sucks.
I know.
last year I literally I like stared at a blank TV for like an hour after the game. I was just like,
Yeah, last year was the most shocking because at least the first 3 years, those Michigan
you
teams
could
were
talk
pretty
away
good.
those. Yeah, I mean, one of those teams won a championship. Those were just good Michigan teams. Last year was where it was like, okay, there's a problem in Columbus that is like Ryan Day has a Michigan problem. That was what the big
it's not just
conversation
because
was.
Michigan was better than Ohio State, which
Right.
I would say they were for 21 to 23, but 24, like it was just. Yeah, I mean, I think you probably know this better than we do, but I mean, I think it was pretty obvious to see that the problem was, I think Ryan Day, they wanted to kind of prove that they were tougher, and they ended up running the ball right into Mason Graham and in the Michigan's D line, which is like one of their advantages, and
I
that
think they were good at that year. Yep.
yeah, that's basically played right into Michigan's hands, and they missed a couple field goals to top that too. But I mean, yeah, well, maybe this year I think maybe the pressure is a little bit off because Ryan Day, at least because he's won a championship. So this year they go. I'm assuming that the mentality is going to be well. I mean, not like in that sense, but I'm assuming the mentality now is going to be for Ohio State to just put it all out there against Michigan, because if that's that kind of one less thing to check off. I would, plus they haven't even played a competitive game the longest time. I feel like they're going to go guns blazing, play to their strengths this year. You throw to those receivers. I mean, hopefully, Smith and Tate come back healthy for that game. And, I mean, the run game is something to use, but I don't know. I mean, I would prefer using your strengths, and hopefully Ohio State does that this year, so they can get that win.
Your mouth to God's ears. That's all. That's what we're hoping for, but that's what we thought they did last year and they didn't. So that's kind of why, back to your original question, Andrew, is like the vibes are not going to be good until, I don't know what the day after that, I guess November 30th. If we beat Michigan, then it'll be all good. If we don't, then we'll probably be back to square one with fire Ryan Day and, the problem and all these things. So I've always said it'd be very interesting with the new playoff. Like Ohio State can lose to Michigan and still make the playoff, obviously.
That's true.
So it'd be interesting, like how many national championships do you get for losses to Michigan? Like what makes up it? Because there are genuinely Ohio State fans that are like, I'd rather beat Michigan over a win a national championship, which I think is crazy.
I don't know about that one.
You're not one of those.
I'm not one of those people. I like winning national championships, but it is interesting that there are genuinely fans that just love that game so much. And I mean, I actually went to the game 2 years ago. When it was 1-2 when Ohio State lost in Columbus. And I mean, walking out of that stadium was like, I always laugh. Me and my dad stopped at an Outback like 15 minutes outside of Columbus for food. And every single person in there was just an Ohio State fan. And it was the quietest Outback. It was the quietest restaurant you've ever seen in your life, because nobody was sitting, everyone was just sad. Nobody was talking. It was just like, you just hear like forks hitting plates. So the vibes are fine until the Michigan game. But because we're 0-4 in the past 4 years, it's just that little voice in the back of your head, that it's there. So we'll see.
Well, I think I know one restaurant that was a little bit quieter than that Outback. Back when I was with my dad, we went to go see Rutgers play Michigan at home. In 2016, and Stuff Your Face is a restaurant, very good restaurant, popular in New Brunswick. A lot of people go there after the game. Well, Michigan blew us out in that game, 78-0. So
78
78-0.
I remember that. Oh man,
yeah,
that's not cool.
You want to talk about a quiet restaurant?
Yeah,
that 2016 Michigan team was. I was actually at the Ohio State game that year. That was the spot year where everyone thought JT Barrett didn't make the one in double overtime. I did not realize they beat Rutgers that year 78-0. So
that got bad.
78 is disrespectful. That's too many points. That's crazy.
Yeah, I feel like there's been rough memories with Rutgers and Michigan, because there's been that, and on the other hand, there's been like the year where Rutgers lost 20-13 in the Big House, and suddenly, a game that you don't really care about, you're like, oh, well, if we did one more thing right. And I hate being in that mentality in a game that you're supposed to have not. I hate that. And also 48-42, we lost in double over. So there's been a lot of that. There's also a lot of Michigan fans who live around here. Same thing probably with Ohio State, Penn State. So we get a lot of that stuff too. So there's just, I don't know. Of the three big teams, probably Ohio State would be the one that, I think me and you, Andrew, like the best, I would say. We don't have
of
the
the
least
big
problem
three.
Of the big three, I mean, Ohio State plays their brand of football. Sometimes it's more exciting, sometimes it's suffocating, but it is kind of what it is. And I don't think people tend to have too many problems with like their mentality or, or arrogance, things like that. Like I feel like Ohio State kind of they are what they are, and they just kind of leave it all out there, and like that's the way that they've been. So.
Well, I will say one thing, and I'm not sure if you knew this, Justin. Shiano was one of the leading voices in the original persecution of Jim Harbaugh for his
The
off the
COVID.
field
not
issues with
COVID,
Connor Stallions and whatnot.
Yeah, that.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
He was very vocal about, hey, I love Greg Schiano. So,
Yeah, and there's also ties with him and Ohio State too, being former DC and everything over there.
There's not much. There's not much love lost in New Jersey for the Michigan Wolverines either. Even though they
came
beat
out
us
very publicly. So I do remember that. So but much appreciated. We're doing all we can too. So
yeah, that's fair. But I guess like going back to the Rutgers Ohio State game. I mean, I know I kind of took a little detour. That was fun, but
a little 5-minute Michigan talk.
We have to talk crap about Michigan whenever we get the chance.
Exactly,
especially with the Ohio State guys.
Yeah, I'm always in for that.
Right, exactly, right. But in terms of special teams, like that was kind of a big thing that kind of stood out in a good way for Ohio State last week. In terms of blocking a punt, returning a kickoff for a touchdown, which I read was the first time that happened since 2010. I mean, Rutgers they had their issues on special teams this season. I mean, I think in terms
normally
of
a strong suit for us.
Yeah, in terms of usually a very strong suit for Rutgers. This season's been like an up and down. They blocked a few punts in the beginning of the year, then they started allowing kickoff return touchdowns a couple weeks, or at least long plays. Then Jay Patel started missing field goals or getting them blocked, but now they've kind of come out of it on the better side, where that's not really the big concern. It's more on how bad the defense has been. But I mean, I don't know. Are there any like wrinkles on is Ohio State gonna be able to pull something like that off again against Rutgers that Scarlet Knights fans should be a little bit worried about? Or is it kind of just it's good that happened, but not really something that you'd really expect on a week to week?
Yeah, no, if Ohio State has a weakness, it is their special teams. There's a lot of issues on the special teams normally. Again, like you said, they lost to Michigan last year because of 2 short missed field goals. Right. Our punter isn't good. I don't know why. He doesn't kick the ball far, and he doesn't it doesn't matter this year. Right. We haven't had to switch so much field position. Maybe it's just lack of reps. I don't know what it is, but
maybe
he doesn't. He's like 130th in the FBS in yards per punt. He just doesn't kick the ball far. Also, the block punt was kind of funny because it technically was a block punt, but he just buried it into the chest. It was just a lot. It was like he did the drop wrong, like when you drop it onto your foot, which I've never seen before. I've never seen a punter. I've seen a punter shank it and stuff, but I've never seen him just drop it wrong. He almost missed his foot, so that was weird. But we'll take it, And then, like you said, the first kickoff return in 15 years, so. It's not something we do much. We did return a punt. Caleb Downs
I remember against
had a punt return touchdown against Indiana last year. So we have done that recently. But no, if you want to rile up an Ohio State fan, talk about the special teams. They get very. We haven't had a special teams coordinator in a couple of years. Ryan Day just kind of does it. That was kind of an Urban Meyer thing. Urban Meyer just kind of did it himself, and it's funny because if you go back to the history of Ohio State, Jim Tressel was his thing. It was Tressel ball was we're gonna have a great defense. We're going to kill you on special teams, and we're going to have a fine offense. Guys like Craig Krenzel are going to play quarterback and we'll win a championship. But it's not that way anymore. The special teams have been for example, this week, Jaden Fielding was asked about our kicker was asked about Michigan. He was like, I hope to have a big kick against Michigan. I want to redeem myself. And the comments did not agree. They were like, I hope you have any kick.
Oh my God.
No offense. But, I told you Ohio State fans will kick. But, yeah, so he did also seal the national championship last year with a kick. So I do give him a little bit of grace. He's very active from 45 and in. He's only missed 2 in his career from 45 and in. I'll let you guess which 2 those were. Both at Michigan last year. Or both against Michigan because the game was home. But, he doesn't have a big leg. His career long is 49 yards. He's never hit a 50-yarder. And then even going back to the Georgia game 2 years ago where Ohio State
I remember that 50 yards. I wanted Ohio State to win that game, and seeing them lose out
of the stadium. So, the special teams have been a little bit of a point of issue for Ohio State for a couple of years now. So I do think it's getting a little bit better. but there is a lot of complaint from I do a report card every week after games of like A, B, C, and I haven't given a lot of Fs this year because Ohio State doesn't do much that poorly. I've given special teams an F a couple times because it's just like they're just not. And in the games, in the playoff and against other teams, flipping the field and stuff like that's important, and they just
when teams are evenly matched, that's true.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. I it's getting a little bit better, as you said last week. Block punt, kickoff return, but that was like that had Ohio State fans really, really, really excited because it doesn't happen often.
Yeah, definitely. I will say one thing: no matter what goes on in the college football playoff from here on out, I will always root for the Big Ten rep as long as it's not Michigan or Penn State. We'll never root for those teams.
I think I agree with you on that one. Yeah.
So I guess I mean we pretty much barreled through most of the other stuff on our outline, right, Arnav?
Yeah, I believe in terms of questions and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think we haven't really talked too much about like Rutgers and what I guess they bring to the table, but I think on the Buckeye side, like I think we do pretty much have that covered.
Yeah. So I do want to say that at the end of the day, even though the Buckeyes defense has been absolutely stellar, I will give a little bit of credit to our offense. I mean, we have 3 what I see to be NFL caliber wide receivers.
I agree. That trio is solid.
Yeah, Sheffield, Duff, and Ian Strong. I mean, they've all been Strong and KJ Duff have been just absolutely incredible. But DT Sheffield, I mean, he's also not been bad by any means. He's also been very solid in the slot. He's been able to find separation space. But I mean, Duff has had monster games. He had like 240 yards, and I mean, they both made contested catches. So really good receivers. I think Calagmanis has had probably the best year for a Rutgers quarterback.
I've always been a big Calagmanis guy. I think he's a very, very fun. I mean, he makes mistakes, but I think he's a fun quarterback to watch. It's just funny, like if you go on just like the ESPN like game breakdown thing, just on their main page of Ohio State, like Calagmanis has more yards than Sayin, Raymond has more yards than Jackson, and Duff has more yards than Smith. So Rutgers is kind of winning that battle. It's funny to look at because Duff is almost 1,000-yard receiver. And I think Smith's like 900. But yeah, and Raymond, obviously, with the past 2 weeks and then last week, 41 carries is insane. But I'll ask you guys, do you think that'll be the case again this week? Is he getting 40 touches?
Well, it depends on if it works or not.
Yeah.
40 carries for 70 yards would be good. So
if you looked at Maryland's rush defense, Maryland's rush defense was notoriously poor. So I think Shiano's game plan in that was just, okay, we're gonna run this until you stop it, and they never did.
They
never did, exactly. So they kept running them. But yeah, I mean, and then because of that, they were able to open up the pass game and have one-on-one matchups where I guess Ian Strong and KJ Duff, like they took. I think Ian Strong definitely had a hat trick, so that allowed the receiving game to open up and basically take the kill shots at Maryland. But the run game, Antoine Raymond really did the grunt work, and at the end of the game he got rewarded by scoring a touchdown, which was like a perfect cap off to his day, and he still kept going I think after that even more. So I mean, like he had quite the day. But last time Rutgers played Ohio State, well, the time before that was 49-10 in Columbus. There was a whole incident with Jesse Merkel like taking off and getting drilled, but then the last time was 35-16 in Piscataway, No.1 Ohio State, and Rutgers had a 9-7 lead at the half. But so that was actually the last matchup. But one thing I remember is Kyle Monangai, who's now on the Bears. He had a pretty good rushing game against the Ohio State defense, which is also still Ohio State's defense, very good against the run. He had I believe 157 yards. So I'm interested to see how well Raymond does this game. I think like maybe he won't get that much, but I think he could maybe go for 100, especially if they keep feeding him. I mean, I would be interested to see how Antoine Raymond attacks that Buckeyes their offensive front and the run defense as a whole.
Yeah, I think he's quietly the best back we faced this year. I mean, we haven't played Iowa and what's his head? I forget his name, but they're running back. Washington, we played Jonah Coleman, but he was like kind of hurt. He didn't really play much.
Yeah, even against us he didn't, which was weird. I thought he was going to have a big game, but he kind of.
And then Texas has Trey Wisner. He was okay, but I do think quietly maybe probably the next 2 weeks are the two best backs we'll face with,
Right.
Raymond and then Jordan Marshall next week, who's an
Yeah.
Ohio kid, which is funny. But so yeah, I think that it's quietly really it's good on good. It's a good running back against a good rush defense. So it'll be interesting to watch for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely something that they're going to lean on a little bit more. Because I also think that Rutgers might be in the same boat of trying to leave this game a little healthy, even though we're not thinking that we're just going to come out and win, but we're also thinking that we're going to have a winner take all game against Penn State at the end of the year,
Yes. Oh.
which please beat them. Like,
I know. I just
please.
want, for especially with the bowl on the line, and I would just hate like Penn State's basically like your guys' Michigan for us. So if they walk out of SHI with a bowl and we don't, like I just can't imagine what the vibes would be around Piscataway for the like as it is. We hate Penn State like so much, and I mean giving the next generation of Rutgers fans like that kind of trauma, like
Generational trauma.
Yeah, just passing it down.
This wouldn't be good. But yeah,
it'd be a funny storyline, like especially looking back in like August, where Penn State was the number 2 team in the country.
Right?
Of Rutgers beats Penn State to knock them out of bowl eligibility.
Yeah, it would be something. So
be a storyline.
I'd
be rooting for Rutgers in that game for sure.
Love to see that one.
Penn State going from the number 2 team in the preseason poll to where they are. I don't think anybody could have seen this coming. I know they don't usually beat the teams they're supposed to beat, but they also typically they don't fall off like this. This was like something. This was historic, but obviously not James Franklin's and Blacksburg. They've kind of turned around their mojo a little bit. I think I like what Terry Smith is doing over there with them. I think he's a good interim coach. He's bringing the energy, but I don't know. Rutgers fans are kind of just Michigan State, try their best against Nebraska this week. If we'll see if they can knock them out of bowl eligibility. If not, I think we just got to be ready because it's going to be probably the biggest game, at SHI in years. With that kind of thing on the line against a team that the fan base hates with a passion. It's just going to be. Except probably they'll bring a lot of people. Probably. They tend to always do. So it should be a big Thanksgiving. It finally feels like we got rivalry week. We played Maryland a couple of times, but this year it feels like we're going to be taking part of that with a huge game on the line. Hopefully we get out of Columbus, healthy and ready to go because all the chips on the table, against Penn State. They're not the usual Penn State that is, my leaps and bounds ahead of Rutgers. So this year, if Rutgers puts together their 8+ game, they could get the win. So we'll see what happens. But I'm really looking forward to at least having the opportunity to get a bowl against a rival like that or a team that Rutgers hasn't beaten in a while. It'll just be a special day, and it should be some good football too. So yeah.
Yeah, you definitely have Ohio State fans rooting for you because they hate Jim Knowles with a passion. So.
Oh, true. I forgot about that. That's another reason. Yeah, Jim Knowles going over to Penn State, but I've always kind of liked Ohio State because I guess number one, their play style is fun. Their defense is, before they were suffocating, they were hard hitting, which I liked. On offense, the receivers were, they always have so much talent, but then also they've always beat Penn State, and as a Rutgers fan, that always makes me really happy. So when
you come here, you win with class. Unlike the Michigan and the Penn State fans.
That too.
Yeah, you win and then you just leave.
Right. And the red kind of blends in with the scarlet, so you kind of don't really know who's who for
it looks like it could be a spring game. You never really know. So
exactly.
Right. So yeah.
Exactly. But we've pretty much run through everything that we wanted to discuss on our outline. Got into a lot of Ohio State talk, a little bit of Rutgers talk. Now it is time for some score predictions. Justin, I'm going to have you lead us off.
Yeah, predicting Ohio State games has actually been pretty easy this year because they just kind of play the same game every week. If you look at the scores, it's very similar. I think it's going to be the only question is if Ohio State, how aggressive they are on fourth down. If they try to kick field goals, get fielding ready for Michigan, or if they are we're not trotting him out against Michigan this year, so we're going to go for it on every fourth down and try to work on that. I think I predicted on our podcast, I think I said 41-14. I think Ohio State will score. Again, Smith and Tate being out could affect that. If they're out, I'll adjust that to 34-14. But because I do think they're good for, one touchdown, probably a piece on their own. So, and I do think Rutgers will be able to score. I think there's a good enough offense there. I think KJ Duff, when you look at the top receivers in the Big Ten, people think Mekhi Lemon, they think Smith, obviously, they think Tate. Like KJ Duff is right in that conversation. So I think he'll be able to do if we have a weak spot on our defense, is probably the corners at times. So I think Duff in Sheffield probably will be able to get some yards. And I'd say depending on, I'll say 41-14, but if Smith and Tate don't play, I might adjust that to 34-14.
Arnav?
Yeah, I mean, I was just working on our staff picks. I kind of similar. I mean, I think Ohio State's played the same game every year, or maybe with the exception of Grambling State, but I think there's such a talent disparity that it was just kind of hard not to get to 70, unfortunately, against them. But even against Ohio, who gave us a very tough game, it was 37-9. They hung in. Washington, and even the last couple of weeks too. I mean, it's kind of been
a lot of 38-7.
Yeah, a lot of 38-7 or 38-14, 34-10, 48-10. It's just, I mean, it's Ohio State hasn't really tended to run it up on anyone unless they kind of don't have a choice, I guess. But like they tend to prefer not to do that, against I mean, they really haven't. I mean, Indiana on the other hand is more of that kind of team that can do that, and I'm excited to see how Ohio State Indiana goes in the Big Ten championship. That's going to be a really good game. But in terms of Rutgers versus Ohio State, I'm thinking something similar. I have right now 42-10 Buckeyes. I think Ohio State can score, especially with the way the Rutgers defense has been this year. They haven't always been the best in coverage. They probably played their best game of the season against Maryland, which is nice, but it's going to be a different beast against the Buckeyes. They struggle against the run, they struggle against the pass. You take out the mobility, the pocket passing is still beating Rutgers anyway, so that's just not promising. But at the same time, I mean, I think Rutgers can score. It's just a matter of how much. I mean, most teams haven't been able to score more than 10 unless they've been among the better ones, and even then they kind of haven't. So I'm leaning towards a 42-10 to kind of be safe with it, I guess. But roughly around that line is where I'm looking at here.
Yeah, I kind of would have to agree a little bit there, although I'll go a little bit more pessimistic with our defense. I mean, I think after I saw them run into each other the 3 games in a row, I was a little bit like, okay, all hope is lost for this unit.
Never a great sign.
I just against Purdue and twice against Illinois, there was players in the end zone seen running into each other. And
also, people just so wide open, like you couldn't believe your mind, like what you're watching. You're like, people, there was no defender in the vicinity multiple plays, and I was just like, what is going on? Like, how's this? But Maryland, that didn't really happen. So I'm hoping, but then again,
Ohio State tighten up against Maryland. I'll give them that.
They did, but I mean, Ohio State's again like a different beast. So it's like maybe that comes back. Even if it doesn't, it probably doesn't matter. But I mean, I don't know. I'm hoping it's not going to be embarrassing bad, because we've had Oregon come to SHI and just completely take us out the game. It was 42-3 at halftime, ended up 56-10, I want to say was the final on that one or something like that. But I mean, I don't think Ohio State's going to be like that. I think it's more going to be like the slow burn, which is why I kind of have 42-10 as the score.
Yeah, that's why I went a little bit more pessimistic with the defense, though. I said 49-10, but I mean, I think as New Jerseyans and Rutgers fans tend to be, I might be a little bit more of a glass half empty kind of guy.
I mean, I don't blame you for doing that either, but so.
But it seems like it seems actually Justin is a little bit more of the
optimistic about our
about us than we are.
Yeah, I know.
41-14.
Well, and I do think just Ohio State's play style plays a role. They're going to take a lot of time off it. Like I think last week they only had 4 first half possessions, but they scored in all of them. So it's just they take time, but it's methodical. They get down the field. And again, I mean, this team's very different when Smith and Tate are playing and when they're not. So
true.
It completely takes away they don't have a big playability if they're not there. Tate's their deep ball guy, and Smith's just put the ball in his hands and see what happens. So if they don't have that, then it'll definitely be more methodical drives down the field and just take up more time off the clock. So that's why it varies if they play or not, because if they do, they'll hit them for 1 or 2 big plays, and that will kind of jump that. But if they don't, then they don't really have that big playmaker receiver.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that looks like pretty much everything that we got for here today. Is there something that you guys want to take a quick minute to mention really quick?
I'm good. Thanks you guys for having me.
Not really. I think we pretty much covered it. Looking forward to some football. Obviously Ohio State's on Big Noon a lot. Like, we're tend not to be, so it'll be exciting even though we're not gonna have the show, it'll be exciting to, have Gus Johnson and Joe Klatt on the call and kind of be in that 12 o'clock on Fox time slot. I watch it a lot, obviously, as a Big Ten fan, as a college football fan, but but yeah, I mean, it'll be nice to be in that time slot for once and on the network. And sometimes it's like the little things like that make things more entertaining. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it should be a good day of football. Hopefully, we don't completely get run out of the building. I don't imagine that happening, but I also wouldn't be too surprised. But yeah, I mean, there's not really too much else to say other than that.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Hoping for a good competitive game out there in Columbus. Justin, thank you so much for joining us. To our viewers, make sure your favorite podcasting app, give us 5 stars, like, subscribe. You listen on YouTube, all that stuff definitely helps us out. Thank you for sitting through another episode with us. And as always, remember that the bells must ring.